All right, hello and welcome everyone to another Well Pop Vinyl collection update video and record collecting experience video. Since the last time I posted a collection update and talked a little bit more about what I'm going to be looking for in my upcoming trip to Japan, we've had the first New York VinylCon occur, which was in Brooklyn over in Industry City. And I also had an experience to go and check out some records, a record collection in a guy's basement who's somewhat local to me. And then, of course, I've been, occasionally going through Brooklyn and parts of Jersey to some of the regular stores. Long story short, as far as what I've been able to pick up at some of those events, it's been pretty sparse. I feel like the universe is sending me a signal to hold my money for Japan. I did end up buying some stuff from this gentleman's basement, so I'll talk a little bit about that first. So this is a neighbor of a friend of ours, and we had them over recently, and he was checking out my vinyl collection over here and talking a little bit about how he collects, which is primarily through, like vintage shops and charity stores and stuff like that. So he's really like a dollar bin or less type of collector, not really concerned about curation beyond price, which is totally fine. And if you just want to like listen to whatever, like that's a great way to do it. And he said his neighbor is in his 80s and has been trying to figure out how to get rid of his collection, that he is in like a old jazz drummer and has a bunch of records. So I was like, okay, this is music to my ears, literally. And we set up some time to go over there, and I went. He was super nice, invited us in, took us down to his basement where he had all of his, drum kit, his snare kit collection, all of his, signed snares and drumsticks and all of his paraphernalia and collectible stuff from across his lifetime. Well, just some of it. He had plenty more upstairs, which he was very excited to show us as well. And yeah, unfortunately, though, as I talked to him, he revealed that he's been working on selling this stuff for quite some time. So the collection was pretty picked. He's been going to, big, not what do you call them? Just like big sales, right? Like they have around here where a bunch of vendors get together. And so that was kind of something that he's been doing up until recently. I think maybe his mobility or health has been impeding him a little bit, but he was actually pretty spry. So I'm not sure what's been holding him back. More recently, either way, the collection was pretty picked over, and his taste, it sounded like anyways, didn't really lean towards what I would have been super interested in. He was mentioning a lot of players and that I just wasn't familiar with. Not that I have perfect jazz knowledge or anything, but I think his taste definitely veered more towards like the early 1950s or even pre-1950s jazz. And so when I tried to talk to him a little about like, you're a lifetime Jersey City person, Blue Note and Van Gelder and all this stuff, and he had no idea what I was talking about or kind of the history of the region when it comes to jazz. And so I think that just perhaps was even past the point where he was interested in the music as much, but he certainly had a ton of collectible stuff or stuff that he perceived to be collectible from the era that he was interested in. And, I still went through the records with my expectations lowered, and I felt like it would kind of be rude to show up and chat and not buy anything. So I did end up just pulling some things out that, to be honest, I haven't gone through Discogs yet and checked them out. And so, I got this one here from him. No idea what this is going to be. Afro percussion. He did have some like Art Blakey stuff, A Night in Tunisia. I have no idea what to expect from this. It looks like it might be a later repress. He was a drummer, so most of the stuff he had was drum related, right? So he had some Max Roach. Figured I'd grab that. Just honestly grabbing anything that I looked even familiar to me. Like I said, most of the stuff was either jazz, like bands and players I had no familiarity with, or things like, Frank Sinatra and type of stuff that you would normally find in a charity shop, right? Got a Dave Brubeck from him, one that I don't have. And yeah, more stuff like that. More Brubeck. Here's a Gato Barbieri. Not sure what that's going to sound like. Bill Evans. I mean, I have a bunch of Bill Evans records. No idea how this one sounds. And Ahmad Jamal, Happy Moods. So just, again, purely picking randomly kind of out of courtesy. And, he took us upstairs. He showed us even more of his collection. and talked about his experiences just being a collector. And it was overall a fun visit. And you gotta take those opportunities when they come to you, right? As for VinylCon in Brooklyn, I mean, it was very near where I used to live in Brooklyn, so I'm very familiar with the area. We used to go to Industry City back when it was first opened up. It was like a revitalized part of Brooklyn there that they were trying to bring in small businesses and restaurants and kind of like boutique office spaces for startups and things like that. So it's a cool area. It was a great place to host this event. I know others have talked about it. I think it was like 50-ish vendors. And I ended up getting there. I paid for the early entry, which was very expensive. I was surprised. I think it was almost like $40. And when you pair that with like tolls and parking and other costs that might be associated with getting to the event, it's not cheap. It was not cheap to go the way that I went, but I wanted to use up the earliest part of my day doing this. I knew I wasn't going to go for both days, so it made sense to me. And I think maybe the price of the early admission being what it was did drive down some of that attendance. It was definitely a smaller queue, a smaller line of people than we see at WFMU for their early entrance. And it could also be location based. But I ended up getting in the line about 10 minutes early. They opened up right on time, go up some stairs. And of course, you just get overwhelmed with like, what do I do first? Got to walk around, check out the walls, see what vendors other people are going to. I'm not on like a first name basis, or I can't really visually recognize any of these people yet. And there were a few things I noticed. I noticed like there were multiple vendors that had first UK, not German, Ige Bemyase from Cannes, and I really want a German one. But there were these UK pressings that a few people had, and there was a Pharoah Sanders Quintet UK pressing, not a US pressing on Fontana, that one of the vendors had that I was thinking about. But again, I really prefer the US pressing. The one thing that really got away from me was there was a vendor there who I think they were from perhaps Virginia or North Carolina, and they had Elements by Joe Henderson up on the wall for, I believe it was like $250. And I didn't, I think they took it down for me. I checked it out. It looked like it was in great condition. The jacket was very, very strong, VG++. And that was within like, the first 30 minutes of the show. And I was like, am I really should I buy this now? Will it probably hang out? Like, in my mind, I thought it might be a record that a lot of people who go to these types of things might already have. So I ended up leaving it, thinking to come back to it later. I still had some booths to explore. And of course, by the time I came back around, it was gone. Unfortunate for me. There was also like a lot of Mingus and Pharoah Sanders stuff as far as the jazz goes. Most of it, or almost all of it, I already had, but I was very surprised at the pricing on it. Some of the stuff that I bought locally here in New York City, you can find these first pressings of Pharoah Sanders, often, depending on the record, often for, $60, $80, sometimes $100. And people had it for more than that. Same with some of like those first mono Mingus records. I've been able to pick those up just around the area. It feels like much cheaper than the vendors there had. I came away with nothing, sadly, but still was happy to go to the show, happy that VinylCon's coming to Brooklyn, and hope to go again next year when, I don't know if I'm going to go to Japan again next year, but, I won't be thinking so consciously about this big event where I have to save budget for. And any other things to talk about? I mean, there were some, I think compared to WFMU, there was a lot more lower end stuff, which seemed to be quite popular. There were some, definitely some vendors there who brought a lot of like, $5 bins or 3 for $10 style bins, and they were getting dug through. People were really happy to see that. There was also surprisingly some vendors who were like carrying a lot of new stock, which I don't know how well they did. It doesn't really seem like this type of show would really, that type of thing would appeal to the collectors there, but who knows? And, of course, there was a great representation of, classic rock, especially there was like one vendor who had a ton of UK stuff. And being New York, it was also cool to see like several hip hop centric vendors. And that was it. I mean, I just didn't buy anything, so too bad for me. I do have some more stuff to show. I'm going to pause the video real quick to go grab what I've been getting recently, mostly through Discogs. All right, this stack might not be in the best order, but I'm going to do my best to get through it quickly. So first up here, one I haven't even opened yet. This is a instrumentals edition of JPEG Mafia's Veterans. I think he put this out. Perhaps it was part of the 10th anniversary of that album recently. And, whenever I get something from him in my email, I always go look. I'm a huge fan. Though I didn't really love his latest record, but everything prior to that, I really, really like. And an artist that I want to support. I hope he keeps making music. So I grabbed that. Fresh off of Discogs recently, I finally found an original pressing of Tosca Suzuki. This record was one that I actually kind of grew up with. My stepfather, for whatever reason, had this. I think he was an art teacher in a high school, and I think a kid left the CD in his class, and he liked it enough to take it into his car. And so I heard it in his car, and then as I got older and had my own CD player, it was one that I would take and listen to or put into my laptop when I was playing games. And yeah, I think this is it's like a Richard Dorfmeister of Kruder and Dorfmeister's side project. It's a little more dubby, I think. I really, really, really love this record, and I had a repress of it that I got rid of sometime last year, just sold it on Discogs, and I've been waiting to get the original here, so I still have to open this one up and clean it up and leave a nice review on Discogs, but happy to get that. Another thing from Bandcamp here, so this is Khadija Al-Hanifi. Oh my gosh, I butchered that. Khadija Al-Hanafi with the record OK. So I learned about this last year on from the Quietus, I believe. They had this in their top albums of the year list. And this is but the vinyl itself wasn't released till this year on Fada Records. And I don't know, it was limited to 100. I don't know why. Maybe that's just the way this label does it. Or maybe they weren't anticipating a lot of demand for it, but this is a juke footwork electronic music record that comes from an artist in Tunisia, interestingly enough. And I've collected some of their other stuff. Once I heard this, I went and checked out their other projects, was able to grab those on Discogs. I'm sure I covered them earlier, but here's the new one. I still haven't opened it. I have to open it up and clean it up. And here's one that I learned about partially while doing... It was like such a coincidence. So I've been doing all that research for Japanese records, and then in an email blast, I believe it was from Stranded. I know that they're associated with some labels who do reissues and stuff like that. I see this Shiho Yabuki with Alpha Wave Music. So this is something that I bought from, I don't think it was actually from Bandcamp. I think it was through a different label website, but this is from Subliminal Sounds. And it's a reissue of a project that she put out in 1990 that was CD only. So now it's available for the first time on vinyl. And it's kind of new age, synthy, ambient that features pink noise as part of the, I guess, compositional technique to really relax you more. And I know there's people who might look at those like pink noise channels on YouTube and stuff. And we've played this already once. It's really nice. And I have some of her older stuff on my want list for when I go looking in Japan for the Japanese pressing. So highly recommend this. And I'm sure if you look it up, you can still find it from the distributor or from the label. This one I don't have too much to say about. I'm sure everyone is aware of it, but Boards of Canada Inferno. I'm sure like a lot of folks, I ended up pre-ordering this without hearing too much of the album. And it's a really interesting gatefold that when I try to put it in the sleeve with the records like I normally store it, they don't quite fit. So I have the records themselves sleeved separately. And this one came with the flexi disc if you pre-ordered the red one. I've liked what I've not made it through the full album yet while listening. I've always gotten interrupted, but I very much like what I hear. I know some people say they prefer the first half of the record to the second. Some people say they prefer the second to the first. So definitely one I'll be listening to, I'm sure, on my flight to Japan when I have time to lock in and really enjoy it. But happy to own this, just being a fan of Boards of Canada. Here's another one, Bandcamp, that I pre-ordered a long time ago. It took a while to get here. Horse Lords, Demand to be Taken to Heaven Alive. on Revenge, which is a label out of New York, here out of Brooklyn. And I've got a bunch of other Horse Lords records, not quite all of them. There's still a few I'm missing, but really, really cool band. It's a Baltimore-based, I believe, quartet doing kind of like experimental rock, math rock, a little bit of like post-rock influence with a lot of rhythmic complexity. And, you know, they do interesting tunings on their instruments. And this is the first one that features voice, as far as I know. Right away in the very first track, you get hit with this vocal singing that might be sampled or looped that really, really reminds me of Tune Yards from back in the day. And also has, I think, yeah, it says here, a saxophone for the first time. So they're featuring some horns on this. So another great one. This is the, I think, the silk screened, more limited cover, which was like $1 more when I pre-ordered it on Bandcamp. Let's see where to go next from here. A couple from Joshua Abrams. So I'm continuing to add from the want list here. I think I got these from Academy, their Discogs, their Academy Warehouse account. And so this is Music for Pulse Meridian Foliation. And let me just scroll my notes down here. And Represensing. So, sorry, no. Music for Pulse is coming up. This is Represensing and Natural Information Society. So from 2010 and 2012 on Aramite. And I've already, you know, opened these, cleaned them up. I've played them in the house. They're great. I would refer you to Dom's video, which I'll try to link to below, on Joshua Abrams. That's what really got me into this artist and interested in collecting his stuff. So 2 more added to the collection there. Let's see if I can find the other one. Yep. This one I actually picked up at Ergot. So this is the Music for Pulse Meridian Foliation, which he put out in 2026 with Drag City. And I think the interesting thing about this one is that it was made for a art installation that was, I don't know if it's still up, but that began in 2023, called Pulse Meridian Foliation by an artist named Lisa Alvarado. And this is just a minimal drone ambient electronic record that was meant to play in the background of that exhibit or that installation. And I guess they liked it enough to put it on record. Another pre-order that I waited for a while off Bandcamp. This is Chris Cole and Oren Ambarchi's Sparkling or Silent Unfamiliar Music. Is that right? Yeah, Sparkling or Silent on Unfamiliar Music out of France. And yeah, this one is very minimal, not quite as upbeat as some of the other Oren Ambarchi that I have really come to enjoy. But yeah, took a gamble on it and went for it. And I'll keep listening. I gotta listen to it a couple more times and we'll see if it's a keeper. Another one that came out of that order from Academy Warehouse that's been on my want list for a really long time, Daniel Bachman's Orange County Serenade, 2014 on Pathetic Records. So yeah, this is an artist I don't know too much about, other than that I found him when I was first kind of exploring American primitive music. I think I heard a podcast or something that, of course, mentioned a lot of the more, I guess, historical players in the genre, and then had this in the list along with the Country Tropics record that I featured in some videos back. I think talking about some of I think it was probably even in my Vinyl Tag record. I can't remember exactly when, but a genre that I'm always interested in checking out. And yeah, I listened to this. It was awesome. It's been on my want list for a while. It's not necessarily an expensive record. It just never seemed to pop up. And when I was putting together that other order, they had it, so I threw it in. Here's one from Stunty, Phlox Lagoon. This is from this year on a label called Carl Records out of Germany. And I found this from a seller in the US that had it on Discogs. They probably, I don't know, they must have been like a store or something. And it's a, very droney ambient release that's not too discordant. I've played it once and no one complained, so I have to play it again. But yeah, thank you, Stunty, for playing this on a recent set. That was a really good, I think that was maybe from 3 or 4 weeks ago now. But yeah, great record from this year. And with that order, I got, let's see, 2 records from the Cosmic Tones Research Trio. So the self-titled from 2024 and All the Sound from 2025 on Pyramid Records. And I think it was in my last collection update video, I talked about the Harlan Silverman record from this year that I really, really liked. His kind of like chill flute, spiritual jazz record. And Dom recommended in the comments to go check out his other projects. So I went and listened to these Cosmic Tones albums, really, really liked them. And yeah, they're not super expensive. Found them both from a Discogs seller. And yeah, just super happy to have them. I put them both on, and it's just great kind of evening music to chill out to. And you gotta love the covers. And as always happens, the second I order something on Discogs, it feels like I see it somewhere. So I think it was this one here, the self-titled, that shortly after, probably even the day after I put in the order on Discogs, I was in this cool bookstore called Aeon Bookstore in Manhattan that has a very small record section and a really great, curation of books there. And just digging through, they had one there. I felt annoyed because I could have had the chance to buy one there. All right, another stunty record here that came also from that same release. This is Shelter from Profondor 4000. Or sorry, Shelter with Profondor 4000 2018. German record from the Growing Bin label. And this is kind of closer to like library, ambient music, lots of synths, very environmental feeling, and some harp that's either, put in digitally or electronically, or perhaps it's like live played. But yeah, just very much in my wheelhouse, very gentle, lovely record. Need to play this one again. Also not very expensive. Getting near the end here. So here's an interesting one. So this is, I don't actually know enough about how the music is made. I believe this is probably music that's made procedurally using some kind of like algorithmic process based on who the artist is. So this is Def Beef. And this is a digital artist who does a lot of stuff now with incorporating elements of blockchain into their work and code. And they've done some very, very interesting stuff that I think even if you're someone who's skeptical of blockchain or NFTs, looking at the work that they've done and the collaborations they've done, they're not just making those ugly, apes and stuff that you see when people talk about NFTs. Like, this is a real artist who's making really cool work and also has a musical side to their practice. So a local gallery that does a lot of digital artwork, or actually almost entirely digital artwork, had a live show featuring Def Beef recently, and he was doing live performance, and they were selling some of this record that he put out in 2021. So I was able to go grab one of those. Unfortunately, this copy is not signed. When he originally put them out, they were signed, and I think these are like extra, essentially dead stock that didn't sell from before and was still sealed, so not signed. And it is, very like bleepy bloopy experimental electronic stuff. I bought it more for just having something from the artist because most of his work is just too expensive for me, to justify acquiring, or just literally could not acquire it. It's just too expensive. So having a record from him feels like a nice way to participate. And lastly, adding to the Braja collection, this is Watermelancholia from 2022. Another record I've been looking for a while, but I think that's usually not expensive, but often it's in Europe. So finally it turned up in the US, and actually better than turned up in the US. It turned up in a store in A1 Records. So I saw this in their, new used arrivals bin towards the back and grabbed it. Finally got to add this one to the collection. Yeah, this is a Belgium release. So I just have not run into this yet, and happy to have it. Yeah, and that's it. So I don't know. I mean, I have a couple things that could still be coming between Discogs and Bandcamp. But yeah, we're in the last 4 weeks countdown to the Japan trip. So I don't know that I'll have too much more in the way of like collection updates before that. So maybe expect perhaps one more video. I can talk a little bit more about, I don't know what else, if I find anything new interesting to talk about. Otherwise, I'll just save it for when I get back and be happy to share that whole experience, probably across, depending on how it goes, perhaps across multiple videos. I'm going to do my best to take, B-roll footage and stuff as the stores allow, and try to do something a little different for the channel, which will also kind of test my abilities and force me to learn a little bit more video editing techniques, because, generally I do these like one and done and post them. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. No promises. I don't want to give myself too big of a project, but it's something that I'm interested in trying, and a lot of people have seemed to figure it out. So stay tuned for that. Thanks everyone, as always, for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed any of these records that you discovered because of the video, please leave a comment below, drop a like, and yeah, I guess I'll see everyone after Japan. Bye.